War is destruction. It's death, blood, and devastation. World War I killed more than 20 million people and left Europe in ruins. But while soldiers drowned in mud, families buried sons, and nations collapsed across the ocean in New York, one American bank quietly got richer than entire countries. Citibank, today one of the world's financial giants, saw the war not as a tragedy, but as the opportunity of a lifetime. It became the banker of death, fueling both sides, profiting from every bullet fired, and turning global suffering into an engine for financial power. This isn't a story about generals or soldiers. It's a story about money, about how Wall Street turned global bloodshed into a business model, and how the First World War transformed one bank from a domestic lender into a global empire. The year is 1914. Europe plunges into chaos. Empires that had stood for centuries are suddenly locked in a war no one had truly expected, and certainly no one was financially prepared for. Germany, Austria-Hungary, France, Britain, Russia, every one of them mobilized millions of men, factories, and weapons. And all of it needed money. Mountains of it. At first, nations turned to gold. Governments sold reserves, borrowed from local banks, and issued bonds. But by the fall of 1914, reality hit. Their treasuries were burning faster than ever before. The war was devouring resources at a pace human history had never seen. It wasn't just a military crisis, it was a financial one. So desperate for cash, Europe looked across the Atlantic to Wall Street. And there stood National Citibank of New York, the bank that would later become Citibank. Unlike most American banks at the time, National City wasn't confined within U.S. borders. It already had branches in Havana, Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro, Montevideo. It was global. It could move money across oceans, finance trade, issue credit, and suddenly it realized it could finance war. Officially, the United States was neutral. President Woodrow Wilson had declared that America would stay out of Europe's conflict. But money doesn't wait for politics. As early as 1915, European nations, especially Britain and France, began forming financial commissions to borrow American cash. The most famous was the Anglo-French Financial Commission, which came begging to Wall Street to keep their armies alive. Enter J.P. Morgan, the titan of American finance, who became the official U.S. agent of the Allies. But Morgan didn't play alone. Citibank joined the syndicate, underwriting loans, arranging bond sales, and making sure that as long as France and Britain kept fighting, Wall Street kept earning. Every artillery shell fired in the trenches, every rifle shipped to Europe, every soldier paid his miserable wages. Behind it was a paper trail of loans, credit, and interest payments flowing back to the banks of New York. By 1917, the Allies had borrowed over $2.3 billion from American banks. Adjusted for inflation, that's well over $50 billion today. Citibank was right there at the center. And for Citibank, this wasn't about politics. It wasn't about ideals. It was pure coal business. The deeper Europe bled, the deeper its debts, and the higher Citibank's profits. But the story goes deeper. When war erupted, the global financial system froze. London had been the world's financial capital for centuries, but war paralyzed it. Global loans dried up. Markets panicked. And this was Citibank's golden chance. By 1915, New York had overtaken London as the world's primary issuer of international loans. For the first time in history, the financial heart of the world shifted westward, from Europe to America. And Citibank was at the very core of that shift. Did Citibank fund both sides? Yes, carefully. American banks financed neutral countries trading with Germany and Austria, while simultaneously underwriting massive Allied loans. Neutrality didn't mean staying out. It meant sitting in the middle, cutting deals with everyone, and taking a cut no matter who won. But there was a risk. Citibank's profits were tied almost entirely to the Allies' ability to pay. Its balance sheet doubled, from about $200 million in 1914 to over $400 million in 1919, all thanks to wartime lending. But if Britain or France collapsed, if they defaulted, Citibank's empire would vanish overnight. So, When the U.S. finally declared war in April 1917, it wasn't just patriotism. It was finance. America's entry ensured that the Allies, Citibank's best customers, wouldn't fail. Washington poured billions more into the war effort, guaranteeing repayment of loans. For Citibank, it was the ultimate insurance policy. But victory brought backlash. After the war, as the world tried to make sense of the carnage, the truth started coming out. In the 1930s, the Nye Committee hearings exposed how American banks and arms manufacturers had profited from World War I. Senators accused Citibank and Morgan of dragging the U.S. into war, not for democracy, not for peace, but to protect their loans. The press gave them a chilling nickname, the Merchants of Death. And they weren't wrong. For Europe, the war was catastrophe. For Citibank, it was expansion. The war didn't just leave them richer, it made them a global power player. It built an international network of branches. It helped cement Wall Street as the new global financial capital. And it taught an enduring lesson. In modern war, finance decides who survives. The moral paradox is brutal. 20 million lives were lost. Empires collapsed. Generations scarred forever. But one American bank thrived. And this story still echoes today. Because the truth is, wars need money as much as men. Banks often profit most when everyone else bleeds. Neutrality in finance is an illusion. You just follow the money. Citibank didn't fire a single bullet in World War I, but it bankrolled millions of them. And in doing so, it not only made itself one of the richest banks on earth, it helped shift the balance of global power from Europe to America. The cost? 20 million lives. The reward? A banking empire. And that, perhaps, is the real story of the First World War.